The great Nintendo war against emulation rages on. It never stopped. And of course, Nintendo's latest victims happen to be part of the emulation scene. One who was a content creator showcasing emulation on their channel, and another is an emulation developer. Let's talk about them. Retro Game Core is a channel that focuses on PC handhelds and retro handhelds, and is definitely one of the best authorities when it comes to retro handhelds. In a world where content creators are being more and more divisive and polarizing, the only thing Retro Game Core has done wrong is draw the ire of Nintendo, unfortunately. It all started when he covered the MIG Switch and the cartridge dumper, a device that essentially lets you back up your own Nintendo Switch physical copies and put them all into one flash cart. While the device could be used to facilitate piracy, Retro Game Core instead shows you how to back up your own legal copies of games that he already owns. The big issue with the video is that Russ showed the title screen of Super Mario 3D World, a game that he owns but ultimately a game that Nintendo made. He didn't even show off any gameplay, he showed off the title screen. But that was enough for Nintendo to pounce. I didn't even hear any menu music at all. But ultimately he was still struck down and he got his very first copyright strike. Copyright strikes are about the worst thing you can get on YouTube as a creator. It's one thing if someone takes your video down for copyright infringement. Okay, yeah, sure, whatever. But at the end of the day, as long as you aren't doing it repeatedly, it's ultimately fine, you learned your lesson. But Russ not only got his video taken down, but he was struck with a copyright strike. 3 strikes and your entire channel is deleted. These strikes do expire after 90 days of receiving it. But tragedy strikes again. He made a video showcasing the new version of Cemu on Android. That video had gameplay showcasing Nintendo games, which I guess Nintendo doesn't like. But that was enough to get Retro Game Core his second copyright strike. That makes 2 copyright strikes. One more copyright strike and his channel would be terminated permanently. I haven't talked to the guy all that much, but from my limited interactions with him, especially in regards to making Steam Pal videos, he's been a very cordial fellow. He's been very nice too, and he's even answered some of my questions in DMs. It's a very unfortunate situation because he's a very passionate gamer. He loves Nintendo games. I mean, why else would you ever emulate Nintendo games if you didn't love them? At the very least, copyright strikes aren't permanent, so after 90 days, he'll be copyright strike free. But if his community posts anything to go by, he'll never showcase Nintendo emulation on his channel on screen ever again. I understand why Nintendo could go after him. I mean, he is a pretty big channel, over 500,000 subscribers. But I mean, he even showed that he bought his games. But Nintendo is Nintendo, and it's sad to say that there's nothing we can do about it. The scary part is that it was Nintendo of Japan that really got to him. If you click on a link to his video that was removed, it'll show Nintendo of Japan, not Nintendo of America. So yeah, the Japanese execs are watching him closely. On the topic of Nintendo of Japan, this isn't related to the topic, but I also want to talk about Palworld being sued by Nintendo, or rather Pocket Pair being sued by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. It's a patent lawsuit as opposed to a copyright infringement lawsuit, which I thought was going to be the case because, I mean, let's be real, some of the pals do look like Pokemon, like Egyptian Lucario. But a patent lawsuit has to do with mechanics, and we don't really know what mechanics are being infringed here. As of the making of this video, we don't know what patents are being violated. And if Pocket Pair's public statement is to be believed, then they don't know what patents are being violated either, which I find crazy. And remember, Nintendo said multiple patents, so we really don't know what patents are being violated. But if these are patents that pertain to the gameplay mechanic of catching Pokemon and all that stuff, then this could cascade down to games that are inspired by Pokemon but are indie. The key word, of course, being could. Again, we still don't know what these patents are, but I'm hoping they're not as bad as we think they are. Honestly, I think what's gonna happen is that they're gonna settle out of court, and then I guess Pocket Pair is going to have to change the shape of their Pokeball or whatever. Maybe it'll be a Pokecube instead. And now it's time to get into the headliner topic. Remember Yuzu? Remember how Nintendo took down Yuzu? Well, it seems like Nintendo decided to go after Ryujinx next. Yes, I called it. And right now, being right feels like the worst thing in the world. I feel like Cassandra of Troy, speaking of a future prophecy that people will just ignore. But of course, rather than being sued to oblivion by Nintendo and then settling out of court, something else happened. No, the Ryujinx team wasn't sued to oblivion, and there was no DMCA takedown. Rather, it seems like the head developer of Ryujinx took a deal with Nintendo. We know nothing about these shady backdoor dealings. We don't know how much Nintendo paid him. Heck, we don't even know if Nintendo paid him in money. And we certainly don't know what he's going to do with the Ryujinx source code. All we know for certain is that Ryujinx is taken down. It's not on GitHub anymore. We also don't know if Nintendo has commandeered the source code, much like they have with Yuzu. All we know for certain is that Nintendo Switch Emulation is dead. Can you still download Yuzu and Ryujinx from somewhere? Yes, you can. Are they being updated anymore? No, they're not. And not to mention, there are reports that supposedly the Yuzu developers used a Nintendo Switch SDK to program Yuzu, which essentially makes the code radioactive, and it essentially means that Nintendo is just going to take down every single fork of Yuzu imaginable, because there's no telling what parts were taken from the Nintendo Switch SDK. Ryujinx was its own project separate from Yuzu and wasn't a fork of Yuzu in any capacity. But at the time, it didn't suffer from the wrath of Nintendo. And with a deal supposedly being made by Nintendo to the main developer, there's no telling what the legal status of the code even is. My theory is that if they commandeer the code, they'll use that to stamp out all forks of Ryujinx, period. What this essentially means is that both Ryujinx and Yuzu are abandoned projects. We won't get any more updates for either of these emulators. And people will say, just wait for the fork. But remember the last time people tried to make Yuzu forks? Remember that 99% of all Yuzu forks died before they could get anywhere, and no one latched onto them or helped develop things? And number two, the ones that did get development, they all got shut down by Nintendo for the same reason. Yes, people can make forks of open source projects, their own special forks, but why on earth would I want to trust a fork from someone that's probably never programmed anything in his life? And of course, there's no guarantee that Nintendo won't also take down any Ryujinx forks. I suspect it's because the Nintendo Switch successor is going to basically be the same thing, but slightly stronger. And no, I'm not calling it the Switch 2 because Nintendo has never called any successor console anything 2. No NES 2, no Game Boy 2, no Super Nintendo 2, no Game Boy Color 2, no N64 2, no Virtual Boy 2, no GameCube 2, no Game Boy Advance 2, no DS 2, no 3DS 2, no Wii 2, no Wii U 2, and the 2DS isn't a successor to anything, it's a side grade from the 3DS. Okay, I got sidetracked, but the point I'm trying to make is that the Super Nintendo Switch isn't going to be called the Switch 2. And also, it's going to be slightly more powerful than the Switch. And it makes me think that Nintendo is going for Nintendo Switch backwards compatibility. Or that the Switch 2 is a slightly better version of a Nintendo Switch. And of course, they don't want a Dolphin situation where Yuzu or Ryujinx can run Nintendo Switch games and Switch Advance games. So there we go, it's just a matter of Nintendo trying to protect their Switch 64 sales. But will it sell as well as a Nintendo Switch? If you like this video, please press the like button and check out our other videos. And if you like those other videos as well, be sure to press the subscribe button and share the good gospel of high-tech lowlife with your friends. Furthermore, we have a community Discord for enlightened individuals such as you. And if you wish to further support high-tech lowlife, be sure to check out our Patreon page. Links in the description.